Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive. We're going to be tackling Greg McKeown's Essentialism, the disciplined pursuit of less.
Yeah, a great book.
It's all about how to really hone in on what matters most
Mm.
in your life and your work,
Mhm.
and then how to get rid of everything else so you can really excel in those key areas.
It's not just doing less.
Right.
It's doing less but better.
Exactly. And I think the book breaks it down into three kind of key parts.
Yeah.
First, we'll talk about how to identify what's truly essential.
Okay.
Second, we're going to dive into how to eliminate distractions, which is, I think, something we all struggle with.
For sure.
And then finally, once you know it's essential, how do you actually make the execution of that, effortless or as effortless as possible?
Right. And that first part, I think, is actually harder than it sounds.
Yes.
Figuring out what is truly essential because we have so many
Right.
opportunities. Yeah. and McKeown has this idea of making yourself unavailable,
Oh, yeah.
which sounds kind of crazy in today's world, but
Yeah.
but it's really about creating that space to think.
Yeah. And he actually tells this really interesting story about Bill Gates and his famous think winks.
Oh, yeah.
So twice a year, Gates would completely disconnect.
No emails.
No work, no emails, just dedicated time for thinking and reflecting.
I love that.
And it was during one of these think weeks that Gates had this realization that the internet was going to be huge, and he completely shifted Microsoft's strategy because of it.
Hmm.
So it really highlights the importance of stepping back from the day-to-day
Yeah.
to gain that clarity,
To see the bigger picture.
to see the bigger picture. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be as extreme as a think week,
Right.
It could just be like scheduling an hour each week for uninterrupted thinking time.
Absolutely.
What do you think? Could you benefit from something like that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. And building on this idea of creating space, McKeown is also a huge advocate for sleep. He doesn't just see it as, downtime. He sees it as a crucial part of peak performance.
Okay, tell me more about this sleep connection.
So he cites research from Lübeck University
Right.
that found that a full night's sleep can actually enhance your problem-solving abilities.
Wow.
And this isn't just theoretical, we see this play out in real life too.
Yeah.
Leaders like Jeff Bezos and Mark Andreessen are very vocal about how prioritizing sleep helps them make better decisions.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I think a lot of us, especially, the more we get into work and we're trying to do more,
Yeah.
we think, oh, I'll just sleep when I'm dead.
Yeah.
I'll just push through it. But actually, that could be
Counterproductive.
counterproductive.
Yeah.
You're actually hindering your ability to figure out what really needs to get done.
Exactly. Sleep is not a luxury.
Right.
It's an investment in your ability to think clearly and to make those essentialist decisions.
Okay, so we've carved out some space for thinking we're well rested. Now comes the hard part.
Yeah.
Choosing between all the things vying for our attention.
Right.
How do we decide what's truly essential when we're bombarded with good opportunities all the time?
Well, this is where McKeown's 90% rule comes in, and this is a really simple but powerful tool.
Okay.
So when you're considering an option, think about the single most important criterion for that decision.
Okay.
Then you score that option on a scale of 0 to 100 based on that criterion.
Right.
If it doesn't score at least a 90,
Wow.
you automatically make it a 0.
So it's not even good enough for it to be a good opportunity. It has to be exceptional.
Exactly. You have to be ruthlessly selective.
Right.
And this helps you break free from that feeling of just good enough and really go for what aligns with your priorities.
I love that. So how would someone actually apply this in their life?
So let's say you're offered a new project at work.
Okay.
And the most important criterion for you might be its potential for growth. If that project doesn't score at least a 90 on that scale, meaning it's not likely to really contribute to your professional development,
You would say no.
you say no, even if it seems like a decent opportunity on the surface.
So you're getting really clear on your non-negotiables
Yes.
and then using those as a filter for every decision.
Exactly. And you can apply this to all sorts of decisions,
Yeah.
from career choices to relationships to how you spend your free time.
That's so helpful. But what about those unexpected opportunities that just kind of pop up,
Oh, yeah.
Because I know I personally struggle with those.
Mm-hmm.
It's like FOMO. What if I say no and I miss out on something amazing?
Right. And that's where McKeown's opportunity knocks method comes in.
Okay.
It gives you a structured way to evaluate those surprise offers.
Tell me more. How does it work?
So the first step is to write a clear description of the opportunity.
Okay.
Really get it down on paper so you can look at it objectively.
Got it.
Then you define 3 minimum criteria.
Minimum criteria.
These are things that absolutely must have to even be considered.
So like non-negotiables.
Yes, your deal breakers.
Okay, so it has to at least pass that test.
Exactly. Then you define 3 ideal criteria.
Ideal.
These are the things that would make it truly exceptional.
Huh?
Something you'd be really excited about.
So you're not just looking for good enough, you're looking for like, wow, this really...
It really sings to you.
Yes.
So if it doesn't meet the minimum criteria, it's an automatic no.
Right.
And even if it meets the minimum criteria, but it doesn't meet at least 2 of your ideal criteria, you also walk away.
I love that. It's like having a system.
A framework.
A framework. So you can just filter out all the noise and make sure you're only saying yes to things that really matter.
And remember, it's not just about saying no.
Right.
It's about making space for those essential yeses that will have the biggest impact.
This has been so helpful already. We've covered so much. Making ourselves unavailable, the power of sleep, the 90% rule, and this opportunity knocks method. I feel like we're building a toolkit,
Absolutely.
for a more intentional life.
Absolutely.
But we're just getting started.
Oh, just getting started.
Stay tuned, because in the next part of our deep dive,
Yes.
we'll explore how to actually eliminate those pesky distractions
Oh, the hard part.
that keep us from focusing on what truly matters.
Can't wait.
Me neither. All right, welcome back to our deep dive into essentialism.
Yes.
So far, we've been talking about how to, identify those essential things, whether they're tasks or goals that deserve our time and energy.
Right.
But now let's talk about eliminating distractions.
Yes.
I think this is something we all struggle with.
For sure. It's so easy to get sidetracked.
Yes.
And McKeown really emphasizes the importance of having a single clear goal.
He actually contrasts what he calls vague goals.
Yes.
With essential intent.
Essential intent. Yes.
Can you explain the difference between those two?
Yeah. So a vague goal is something like, be more innovative, which is really broad. It doesn't give you a clear direction.
Right.
Essential intent, on the other hand, is very specific.
Yeah.
He gives the example of Martha Lane Fox,
All right.
the UK's digital champion.
Oh, yeah.
Her goal wasn't just to promote technology. It was to get everyone in the UK online by the end of 2012.
Wow.
So very specific, very measurable.
I see. So everyone involved knows exactly what they're working toward.
Exactly. There's no wasted effort.
Yeah. And that clarity of purpose can be incredibly motivating.
Absolutely. It gives you that North Star
Yeah.
to guide your decisions.
So how can we apply this to our own lives?
Well, I think a really helpful framework is the SMART goals framework.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of SMART goals.
Yeah. It stands for
Specific, measurable,
attainable,
relevant, and time-bound.
Okay. Could you give me an example of how that would work, like in real life?
Sure. So let's say your vague goal is, I want to be healthier.
Okay.
A SMART goal would be, I want to run a 5K in 3 months.
It's specific. You know exactly what you're aiming for.
Right.
It's measurable. You can track your progress.
Mhm.
It's attainable. Hopefully it's challenging, but realistic.
Right.
It's relevant to your desire to be healthier.
Yeah.
And it's time-bound. You've set a deadline.
I see. So you're not just saying, I want to be healthier eventually. You're like, no,
You have a plan.
I'm going to do this and by this date.
Exactly.
Okay, I like it.
Once you have that clear, compelling goal,
Yeah.
you have to protect it.
Okay.
You have to learn to say no
Oh, the dreaded no.
to all those distractions, to those non-essential requests that come your way.
It's so hard to say no.
I know. It can be really difficult.
Especially because you don't want to disappoint people.
Yeah, you don't want to miss out on opportunities. You want to be helpful.
Right. You want to be a team player.
Exactly. But McKeown gives some really good advice for saying no gracefully and effectively.
Okay. What's his advice?
So he has these 4 principles.
Okay.
The first is separate the decision from the relationship. Remember, you're not rejecting the person.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
just declining the request.
Right. It's not personal.
Exactly. The second principle is you don't need to give a lengthy explanation.
Okay.
A simple, polite no is often sufficient.
Keep it short and sweet.
Yes. Third, consider suggesting an alternative.
Well, that's good.
If possible,
Yeah.
maybe someone else would be a better fit for the task, or maybe you could offer to help in a different way.
Right. Or at a later time.
At a later time, exactly.
Okay.
And then finally, be clear and direct.
Yes.
Don't beat around the bush.
Right.
Just be upfront.
So be assertive, but also respectful.
Exactly. It's about protecting your time and energy so you can focus on what truly matters.
It seems like having that clear essential intent makes it a lot easier to say no.
Absolutely.
You're much less likely to get sidetracked when you know what you're really working toward.
Exactly. Now, there's another aspect of eliminating distractions that I think is often overlooked. It's the idea of cutting our losses.
Oh, cutting our losses. Okay.
Sometimes we hold on to projects or commitments, even when they're clearly not serving us anymore.
Yes. It's like that sunk cost fallacy.
The sunk cost fallacy. Yes, we've invested time and energy.
Right. And we don't want to admit defeat.
We don't want to give up.
What's that?
Sometimes we need to.
We have to.
We need to be honest with ourselves.
Right.
Acknowledge those sunk costs.
And move on.
Redirect our energy towards something more promising.
It's like ripping off a Band-Aid.
Yes.
It might sting a little bit.
It might be painful in the moment.
But ultimately,
that's for the best.
It's the best way to move forward.
Yeah. Have you ever had to do that?
All the time.
Cut your losses on something you'd invested a lot in.
It's so hard. Especially when you're passionate about something.
Right.
But you realize it's just not.
It's not going anywhere.
It's not working or.
Yeah, or it's taking you away from something else that could be more impactful.
Right, exactly. Okay, so we've talked about identifying the essential.
Yes.
Eliminating distractions, even cutting our losses.
Right.
That's a great foundation.
It is.
But how do we make sure those essential tasks actually get done?
Right. How to go from intention to action.
Yes.
That brings us to the third core area of essentialism, effortless execution.
Okay, effortless execution.
And this is where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
One of the key principles here is the idea of buffer time.
Buffer time. I'm listening. Tell me more.
Buffer time. So is that like adding even more to our schedules?
I know, right? It sounds counterintuitive. But we all know that life happens, you know?
Yeah.
Projects take longer than we expect.
Always.
Emergencies pop up, things come up, and buffer time is about being proactive.
Okay.
It's about creating space for those unexpected things.
So instead of being like constantly stressed and behind, we're like creating a cushion.
Exactly.
To absorb the chaos.
McKeow gives this great example from when he was a student at Stanford.
He would get his course syllabus at the beginning of the semester, and he would map out all the assignments on this giant calendar in his room, and he would actually start working on things way in advance.
That's amazing.
Essentially building in buffer time.
Right.
So that if something unexpected came up,
he'd be prepared.
He wouldn't be totally thrown off.
I bet that made him a much less stressed out student.
Oh, absolutely. And one practical tip he gives is to add 50% to your estimated task time.
Okay, so if I think a project will take me like 2 hours, I should block out 3 hours.
Exactly. I know, it feels
like you're wasting time.
Like you're wasting time, but you're actually setting yourself up for success.
Right, because things always take longer than we think.
Almost always.
Okay, I like it.
Yes.
It's about being realistic.
Yes.
What are some other strategies for this effortless execution idea?
Another crucial element is clarity.
Clarity, okay.
And this is about really being ruthless about eliminating anything that doesn't directly support the essential intent of the project.
So like streamlining processes.
Yes.
Delegating tasks, if possible.
Absolutely.
Saying no to extra stuff.
Anything that adds complexity without adding value.
Right. It's about constantly asking yourself, why am I doing this?
Yeah. What's the purpose?
Is this actually necessary?
Is there a simpler way to achieve the same outcome?
I'm sensing a theme here.
Yes.
This whole book is about being so intentional and discerning with everything.
At every stage.
From the beginning, when you're identifying what's essential all the way to the end.
Exactly. It's not just about getting things done. It's about making sure we're getting the right things done.
And in the best way possible.
And in a way that allows us to thrive.
I love that.
I love that.
Okay, so is there anything else about this kind of effortless execution idea?
One more piece.
Okay.
Routines.
Oh, I love routines.
McKeow is a big believer in the power of routines.
Yeah.
He says that by establishing routines for essential tasks, we can almost automate them.
Make them subconscious.
Exactly. And that frees up our mental energy for the more strategic thinking.
Right. So it's like those things are just taken care of, and we don't even have to think about them.
Right. Like brushing your teeth.
Yeah. You just do it.
You don't have to make a decision about it every morning.
What are some examples of routines that people could implement?
It really depends on your individual needs and goals.
Right.
But it could be a morning routine to set yourself up for a productive day.
Yeah.
Or a specific process for tackling your most important work task,
Okay.
or even a simple ritual for winding down at the end of the day.
Right. Anything that helps you stay on track.
Exactly. The key is to figure out what's essential for you
Yeah.
and then create a system that makes it as easy and automatic as possible.
This has been so insightful.
I agree.
I feel like we've gotten like a whole new toolkit,
A new perspective.
a new perspective. Yeah, for living a more intentional life.
And that's really the power of essentialism.
Yeah.
It's not just a productivity hack.
Right.
It's a way of life.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into essentialism, I'll leave you with a question.
Okay.
What's one thing you learned today that you could apply to your own life right now?
And what's one non-essential commitment you could cut to make space for something that truly matters?
Ooh, I like that.
Something that excites you, something that aligns with your essential self.
And think back to what we talked about earlier, that idea of cutting losses.
Yes.
Is there something you're holding on to that's no longer serving you?
What could you let go of?
To make space for something new.
We hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought.
Yeah. And some tools and strategies to start living a more essentialist life.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Until next time.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep living essentially.